Hey everyone, forgive me while I adjust my iced black tea with boba because yes, it's been a very long day. So hold on a second. Whee! Okay, there we go. I'm in downtown Seattle, walking from the International District to the water taxi that'll take me to Vashon. And so there's this really cool thing that I've always known to be true, and I've always talked to people about it, friends and especially kids. Oh gosh, here we go. I have 5 seconds to get across the intersection. And so it's this idea that less is more. So just think about that for a second. Less is more. Now, you might think that's an oxymoron, right? That it's literally impossible for less to be more. But no, actually, let me explain, because the math is mathing on this situation. And I am currently experiencing the joy of the reality of that concept. And if you take this with you, I hope you do, your life will be better many times over. Okay, so less is more. If you have less children, each of them will get more of your resources. If you have less things on your plate, those things that are on your plate will take up more of your life. You see where I'm going with this. So there are many ways that less is more plays out. Sometimes it plays out like I just described. You have too many things on your plate, you get rid of a couple of things, trying to not get hit by a car, and now you have more time for what's left. Okay, good. So sometimes though, scarcity has great value. Less is more can mean that when you have less of something, it becomes more important to you. Now, pause for a minute with me, because that is the opposite, or very different, right? That is different. But the idea, less is more, still applies. Many people know the story of J.K. Rowling when she was in dire straits, had escaped a abusive marriage, and was being treated rather badly by the social worker who was supposed to be, giving her rah-rah support while she was living on government assistance as a single mom in a little tiny apartment, trying to get her life in order. And in that situation, there we go, I can cross the road here. She was, in dire straits. She took this wonderful story that she'd been thinking about for so long in her younger years, apparently, and she wrote it down, and it turned into this incredible world that so many, I think we're at billions of people in the world, love this world. I'm gonna go into the shade, I think. Yeah, I think that works. And so in that situation, she had less going for her. She had less money to spend. She had probably then less distractions in her life. She had less entertainment opportunities. She had possibly less self-esteem. She had all these things that were less. And they went ahead and gave her more reason to sit down for hours in a coffee shop and write out her first book. So I have been working very, very hard for my life ever since I was about 10 years old. I'm not going to go through it and drive you crazy. Just, I'll tell you that I didn't have allowance. My parents didn't have money to give me to go spend on fun things. And I started working at a very young age in order to have money to spend, which is not a pity party, not a sob story. This is actually what children should be doing. And as an example, one of the things I found frustrating, actually, here's another less is more. This is real. My parents had nothing economically to give me, aside from like they were able to provide a home and food and some clothing and things like that. So because I had less from them, I had more of a reason, more of a motivation to go out and start figuring out, how do you make money? How do you provide value to people? How do you provide service to people that is of use to them so they will pay you for your time and your effort? So less became more. When I was raising my boys, I had, for example, enough money to be able to buy them an iTouch when they first came out. And my oldest son, Ramon, wanted one. But instead, I said that if he wanted one, he'd have to earn the money himself. And he worked for 30 hours, and we tracked it all. At $10 an hour, he earned the $300 that he needed to buy the iTouch. And then I had told him I would pay for the protection. There was insurance, I think, and also like a protective cover. So he was 10 when he did that. And he was out in the backyard weed whacking and digging holes and watering things. And I'm supposed to press a button? I think I'm supposed to press a button, people. Let's see if I can get across the road here. So sometimes when you're a parent like my parents and you have less, your children are not stupid. They're gonna know you don't have a lot of money. And if you raise your children without a lot of money, but with a healthy mental outlook about that, if you're not mentally poor, you're just economically poor, your children will learn a million lessons from that, and they will not want you to spend your money on them because they'll know how hard that is, and they'll want to go out and get a job, I'm crossing here, and earn their own money and so on and so forth. So what was interesting is I had more economic wealth when I was raising my kids, and it was a little bit harder to say no to my kids when they knew I could afford something. Whereas I never would have asked my dad for something or my mom, and I would have just figured out how to get it on my own. Another example of less is more. The examples go on and on and on. So here we are, and I went through my divorce, and I ended up with the house and a very, 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 very small amount of spousal support. It's about 1/4 of what I need to get along, and it's about 1/2 of the total basic bills that I need just to take care of the property taxes, utilities, literally. So it covers half of that, and so I have to get a job, which is great. And I have found that, so I have this great job, just started this week. I love it. I love my boss. I love our customers. I love the work. I'm really happy, and I'm working really hard. I actually have 4 jobs right now. I have that job, which is about 28 hours a week, maybe a little bit more. I have a 10-hour job I do once a week, and I have a side job I'm doing right now, which is about 6 hours a week. We got music in the house. And yeah, and I've got another job, but anyways, less about me. So what's interesting is that I'm completely slammed. Now, what does this mean? It means I have hardly no time for the property. So that less time for the property means I'm now more efficient. Not that I was inefficient, but it's like there's a real focused efficiency to how do I keep the plants alive so they don't die. and I have less free time, dramatically less flexibility. So today, which was a day where I had 2 appointments in the city, has felt like an ice cream sundae. I mean, I cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed and appreciated every minute of this day, because having less time to be at ease, to be relaxed, means that when you have a day like that, you cherish it more. So I'll finish with one more thing. I had always suspected I would actually write better under more challenging conditions, because I did most of the writing when my kids were younger, and I would just desperately get a few hours away from home. I would go to the coffee shop, I would write like crazy, and because I had less time to focus on writing, I had this motivation to go out there and make the most of some time. And so today, it started hitting me, and I started feeling these thoughts about my book and my characters, and I started taking notes while I was walking down the street. And so the cool thing is that I may get more done on my novel in maybe 4 hours every weekend than I was getting when I had a more open schedule, because less is more. And there's just so many examples of how this is true. And it's always a positive. It's always a positive. So, anyways, less is more, and I'm gonna go catch a ferry. Bye.